this is the worst season we've ever had. This is
Yeah.
this is this.
I'm recording now, Dennis, so
Yeah.
don't cuss for the children's. But
All right.
anyway,
Yeah,
yeah, if you want to start the show and we'll editorialize a little bit about this concept
I love
that
it.
the
I love it.
audience didn't get to hear.
Perfect. All right, here we go. How you doing, everybody? This is Dennis Michelson. Welcome to the science of fantasy football. Why the science of fantasy football? Well, you get a meteorologist, that's me, and a biologist together, that's the professor, and they're going to use the scientific method, and that is guaranteed to make you a smarter fantasy football player. How can I give a guarantee in something as chaotic as the week to week happenings in fantasy football? It's just because that means you're going to use the statistics in a smart way. And fantasy football is a statistically driven game. And if you understand the weekly stats better, which the scientific method is going to train you to do, you are going to have more fun and more success in fantasy football. And joining me as he does each and every week. And as a matter of fact, twice a
Twice a
week
week.
during the regular season. He is the professor after all. It is John Bush. And John, we are halfway home
Yep,
to the fantasy football playoffs. It has been a
ready.
crazy year, but it's been a fun year.
Yeah, well, it's been crazily fun. Let's call it that. Uh, yeah, I know we're going to talk lots of data, but I'm going to jump into my editorial while I got my thinking. And Dennis and I were discussing, folks, our excitement to hurry, get this season over, collect our checks, reward our wives, and hopefully not our in-laws, our some of our winnings, and buy our beloved dogs new fancy collars and new
Ooh,
fancy cat toys for the cat and the data
yeah.
cat and the data dog and all that. But we were just discussing our consistency. We tested 6 metrics this year, and we've just fired up to have months of time to really uh, chew this data and look at it and we're going to get better, and I'm ready to do the next season now. It's been fun, but I'm a little tired of these injuries, Dennis, and
Oh, it's been
wacky
rough.
trades. And
Yeah.
my Saints signed Kamara. I was happy. I guess Hopkins went to the Chiefs. I know you probably want to talk about that. There's rumors that Cooper Kupp's going places, Stanford's going places. It's crazy, crazy times here midway through.
Oh yeah. And I think the reason a lot of the trades have happened is because a lot of injuries have happened or a lot of players did not quite live up to their free agent expectation, and teams are having to make moves on the fly. And you quite frankly have some teams that I think at the beginning of the season, or at least during the offseason, they had a thought they might be a playoff team. And now their reality is crashing home that, ugh, our team is worse than it was last
Hmm.
year, not better. And we might as well deal some of our older players and some of the guys that will not be back next year because we're not going to the playoffs. Or even if we did manage to sneak in and get that last playoff spot, we're probably going to get wiped out early. So, you're seeing a lot of trades, you're seeing a lot of disgruntled players, you're seeing a lot of injuries. Just but this is what fantasy football is all about. This is the luck part of the game. The injuries are the bad luck part of the game. And some of the spike week games where just ridiculous, 45-point game out of nowhere for a player, that's the luck side of the game of fantasy football. I will never deny that there is a level of luck in this game, but it's no different than the game of poker. And if you're playing Texas Hold'em poker and you have a good strategy, even if you're getting crappy cards, you can survive until you get a good hand. And odds say you'll eventually get a good hand. And then you're set up for a good run and to make a good play. It's the same thing in fantasy football. And the same thing applies to any sports gambling. Like you can be the smartest horse race handicapper in the world, but if you don't have a good strategy for making the wagers and managing your bankroll, you're going to end up losing. That's why the casinos always get bigger. They never shrink. That's why the sports books are always getting bigger. They don't shrink. It's because the odds are in the house's favor when it comes to gambling. But if you use wise bankroll management, you can be that small percentage that wins consistently. In fantasy football, all you got to do, Professor, is beat the consensus. It's not that difficult. And we did a beta test this year. And here's the thing, folks, the scientific method, you have a theory, you have your hypothesis, and then you need to test that hypothesis. But here's the difference. So we're working on some sports gambling tools this season. We worked on them in the off season. Professor did the analysis, came up with a whole bunch of data that we could track. We figured the first 4 or 5 weeks, we're going to do just some testing. We're going to look at the landscape of what's going on, and we're going to see what we can do. And what we learned was it's not a smart idea at this point in our learning curve to put a lot of money on this.
Oh, yeah.
Because we need to do a beta test, but we need to do a $1 beta test, not a $100 beta test. But here's the difference, folks. We tested our fantasy football tools individually, and we knew what they could do. Our beta test was putting 6 different weekly value tools together and to use them to draft teams. I'll have an article later this week that shows on my portfolio of new teams how I've done by using the better than zero method. And I'll jump to the I'll ruin the story, but you'll want to read the article to see how this works. It's been very successful. Our beta test, we had enough confidence in it that we put money on it with our own teams, our own fantasy football portfolio, because it had been tested enough. That's the difference between our knowledge base of fantasy football versus our knowledge base of sports gambling. So you got to do the beta test, but you do them smart. And when I see so many people, I'm getting tired of fantasy football. I'm working too hard on. If you think that you're working too hard on anything in life, then that's not the thing you should be doing in life. Yes, we all have to make a living. We all have to do things that, we don't 100% love every day. I'd love to be, getting paid good money to, sit and pet my dog all day. She'd like that too. And if she ever wins the lottery, I think that's what ends up happening. But, so we got to take a job that we might not 100% love going there every day and doing it. But fantasy football is different. You're not getting rich over creating fantasy football content. You got to do this because you love it. You got to do it because it's part of what you are. It's part of what makes you excited. I get up in the morning, Professor, and I can't wait to start digging into the data.
Yep.
Some of it's to gain an advantage to win money, but some of it's just to unravel this puzzle that is fantasy football. When I see people griping about stuff having to do with fantasy football, then quit, walk away. Don't do it. Like, Are you trying to impress me by telling me how hard you're working? Because I'll guarantee I spent more hours last week working on data than you did. And that's fine. That's what I enjoy doing. So I'm not complaining. I'm actually bragging about it because every study that I've done, Professor, every piece of data, every time you undo another piece of the puzzle, you got five more questions that need testing. That's fun. That's what I call fun.
And just a couple of points. First, if I were to, as a creator, I don't think myself as a creator, I'm a researcher, but if I'm
Yes.
tired after 7, 8, then I'm not taking off and coming back. I just, it'd be like I'm tired of being a scientist, and I don't understand that. So, second thing, I'll hear a lot on your point about the research. What I hear a lot is the people discussing fantasy are just using aspects of data, but I haven't heard them talking about the research. Again, I haven't heard every podcast. You and I know for sure we talk about testing models, and I don't know who's doing for some of these people that I hear on the radio and whatnot. I don't know what they're doing. I mean, I guess they've got people behind the scenes, and but I wouldn't I wouldn't just want to slave away if I couldn't enjoy the fruits, and I love to run and test. The Vegas material, I've a little bit behind on keeping that database up. What I have found is frustration, Dennis. I don't have enough data points.
Yes.
When I
Yes.
start carving out the data and I want to go 3, 4 levels and I run out, then I'm, 10 instances and I do not feel confident,
No.
betting even $1 on that. It's just so I think I've realized that we need more data still. I am effing around this year, but still trying to feed the database. But it's a chore right now, and you have to forego the fun till later, and it may be a few years later because I want to slice and dice it, and we don't have enough data to. I know Vegas does. If they'd like to hire Dennis and I, we're ready. We will guide y'all anyway, but I doubt that. So those are a couple points, Dennis. There is some breaking news.
Oh, yeah.
Tyreek Hill says, and this is his fantasy advice for the week. He says, "We're back, baby. Strike up the effing band. Start me this week." So if you
Oof.
didn't hear it first, Tyreek says start him this week. So everybody's concerned. Should we start him? Should we not? Tyreek says start him, Dennis. So I guess we should start him. Anyway, I love when the players acknowledge there's a fantasy, because I know some, like, we don't give a F about your fantasy team. I understand that, but it's nice. And that some will, like, yeah, start me, like Austin Eckler has, a show, and others have, uh, and I always love to hear the players that play fantasy. And there's a lot of players, like in baseball, that play fantasy football, and probably vice versa, in hockey and what. It's nice to see the work we do as fantasy people appreciate that, and the athletes that are doing it. So anyway, Tyreek says starting, Dennis. So I know that was a burning question for some of your teams. Most of mine are best ball, where I got him. Just I was drafting. I'm trying to remember what round he was. Was he early? Was he late first, early second?
He-
I was probably drafting Henry in the second round.
yeah, by the
So
by the
And
end of the draft season,
yeah,
Tyreek Hill had snuck up to the consensus number one. He was going lower in FPPC.
okay.
He was about the fifth
Yeah,
wide
okay. I
receiver
knew,
off the,
yeah.
yeah.
So I was probably moving to AJ Brown, and maybe that was a bad choice, but that I was trying to do Brown and Derrick Henry, or
Oh,
I was
yeah.
trying to, Brown and maybe a Kelsey. Uh, if I know now about tight end, I would have obviously went for sure AJ Brown and Henry. But I do have a lot of Henry shares, but not as many as I need, Dennis. I need them all, right? I want I mean, I got all these teams. I want to win every one of them. And I have to kind of step back a little bit. I was having to give up Godwin this week and
Oh,
Ayuk, and it was not fun because the players I was fishing for, I know they're hot names on the wire, some of them, but it felt sad. It's like I got a prize here. Be like
oh,
selling your prize animal. I know your egg and the 4-H. And those kids work their butt off for those prize
oh,
pigs
yeah.
and goats. And, I know that's bittersweet to sell those because I watch Dr. Poe and he's up in Michigan and he's the vet for the local 4-H, fair, and he tries to help those kids and he talks about how important that is for people to appreciate animals and learn how to raise them. And but I just felt like some of those kids, it's like they're giving away their little pet Porky Pig there. And I know they get money. They'll go out there with a stick and make it walk. And I mean, it is a joy to see some of that. We have a fair here in September at our little town, and they have all. When I go through the animal, look at all the prize birds, and I like the birds. I guess the plumage.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
As an ornithologist, I took ornithology, Dennis. Dennis, I was 300 plus pounds, and I was having to climb these thin pine trees to check out the nest. Let me tell you. Now, I was a young man, and I had a lot of padding to protect me if I fell down, but getting those tree spikes out and jumping up, that's one of the reasons that I didn't want to be a field biologist. I wanted to be a cell, kind of a small micro person, because I didn't have to climb a tree to get the bacteria nest. Okay. Just cough, just cough, just cough in my hand, and I got plenty of bacteria to study the rest of my life. So anyway, but when I taught micro, Dennis, the kids, I got a sore throat. And so I'd go and actually streak their throat. There's a plate called blood agar plate, and it will tell you if you have beta hemolytic strep
Ooh.
bacteria in it. So I could, I told them, go to the doc, go get your medicine. But if he'd come back or she, and I've streaked my own throat with plates, and I'd go to my doctor and well, I don't know if you got strep. He said, you're right, doc. I went and did the blood agar plate and I was negative, but I do have gram positive cocci, and he's like, okay. So I tricked the doc. He was just figuring. Then all of a sudden, so I was culturing my own, and I will admit, as a graduate student, we get to order antibiotics for our research. And on occasion, being a poor student, I have popped some tetracycline and some ampicillin. I know it's probably veterinary grade, but I figure if the cows and pigs can get the antibiotics, it's good for a graduate student. So over the years, I have self-medicated my own antibiotics, as a poor student. So anyway, I don't know how I got off topic, but anyway, Dennis, you're too far away. If we lived in the same town, you come. Dr. Bush, I got a cough. Okay, let's go streak this plate here. I'll tell you what we're doing. I'll save you some money. Just call the doc. Say, yeah, and show him a picture. Say, doc, I got beta strep here. So anyway, so
What's
Tyreek Hill
better?
start. Forget bacteria, but
So,
the
so,
good old
so,
days, Dan.
so Tyreek Hill is a great
Don't you love that?
illustration.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I actually love that talk.
Start
That's
me this week.
crazy. So Tyreek saying start me.
That's
Here's
great.
he's a great example of of how a season can go when you remove a quarterback. So using my four weekly value metrics that go into my consensus, that just that article is up now. Before the season, well, actually using this season's weighted MVP and weekly values, but having data that still relies heavily on the previous two seasons, he's third and fifth at the wide receiver position. If you remove the past and only look at this season's data, right now his metrics, Professor, are 50th and 54th.
Mm,
Ouch.
ouch. Well,
So,
we can start him this week, he said.
but he's guaranteeing, and I'll tell you this: in my dynasty leagues where I have Tyreek Hill,
Yeah.
I have run him out there every single week. The only difference is I didn't run Waddle out every single week.
Yeah.
I have been very cautious. Your first your top wide receiver, my goodness, you got to look at it and say, is somebody else more likely to get me 10 points? I don't care if I'm throwing him the ball. Uh, you, a player that good, he's in your starting lineup. You have to really have a deep team to think about benching him. But this week in redraft, if Tyreek is saying the band is back together, now here's the thing:
I don't know.
the band could be back together for one play.
Yeah, the band could snap.
Tua could get hit and be gone again, and
Yeah.
they're down to like they're 15. I think they brought one of the cheerleaders in to
Oh my
quarterback
goodness.
at the end of the game, looking at the box score. It was tough. They were running out of quarterbacks last week, and boy, that has really hurt that team, both in fantasy football with production, but in real football terms. It's been rough, but Tyreek still rated out as the 24th best wide receiver in my consensus ratings because that back class kind of keeps him up there. And I'll guarantee by the end of the season, if Tua is in there, he'll be top 10.
I'm looking forward to things that are changing, Dennis, and we have arrived, and there's a lot of changing, I guess, with the Chiefs. What's your take on Hopkins?
That was the perfect move for the Chiefs. It was very cheap. It's a rental. It doesn't cost you anything after this year. So if Rashee Rice can avoid, his suspension and he comes back healthy next year, you're fine. You didn't have any cap hit because of bringing him on. It's a fifth round pick that could turn into a fourth round pick. That's brilliant because right now you don't know when Juju Smith-Schuster's going to be back. So you have Xavier Worthy, a rookie who is a very good player, but he's limited in what he can do every week. And now you bring in a guy who can be the older, slower Rashee Rice in that offense.
Older, slower. Okay.
But Cooper Kupp has been slow his
Well,
entire
Dennis,
career.
let me ask you this. If I remember, it's been a while since I've seen Hopkins at full strength and with everything going. He could contest in the red
Oh,
zone.
yeah. Yes.
And I mean, that's Kelsey's job, and he hasn't had a lot of that this season. I think Hopkins is going to be contesting, and that may maybe crack
for Kelsey. Maybe crack the equation and Kelsey will benefit. That's what I'm hoping, because I got a lot more Kelsey than I do D-Hop. A lot
Yeah,
more. So I
yeah,
need that to help Kelsey is, I guess that's, I hadn't heard anybody say, but that's what I'm looking in
yes,
this deal, is to unlock Kelsey more.
100% agree with you on that. I couldn't
I
I
mean,
couldn't
in the
have said
red
it
zone,
better.
Dennis, I watched these games, and okay, here's our trick: gets close end zone. Let's just spy on Kelsey and double team him, and then nobody else could do it. So that's
No,
what I'm
no,
hoping, Dennis.
no, it's absolutely 100% on target. In fact, on my article about the consensus, I I said on Kelsey, I said the addition of a solid wide receiver with the trade for D Hop should
Yep.
open the field up for the best tight end in the game.
Yep.
It gives them redundancy on things to cover, and you're not going to be able to cover both of them while at the same time. So here's what a defense has a choice of doing. So they can load up the box and try to stop Kareem Hunt, who's been very good, rushing right up the middle in front of the two guards in the center, right up the gut for Kansas City. There's the strength of their rushing offense. So you go ahead and pack the box on that. Then all of a sudden, you have a decision on what to do in the backfield. You now can either single cover everybody, including Kelsey, and they're going to eat you alive.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you try to play a zone, they're going to pick you apart. So you bring those linebackers up and try to force Kansas City to throw, then all of a sudden you're in good shape. Now, if they go ahead and try to bring the safeties up to contest throws to Hopkins and Kelsey, then all of a sudden you got Xavier Worthy blowing the top off the offense, off the defense, but going deep. So what they've been lacking since Rice went down is having that second guy that can pick across the middle of the field and just make those short plays. They got plenty of speed. Mecole Hardman is a very good real football player. He has a role in that offense. Guys like Noah Gray have a role in that offense. But what they were missing was that Rashee Rice kind of guy who was always going to find the open spot, and then he was going to be able to contest the catch in a crowded situation. And Hopkins can do that. I'm so glad as a Chiefs fan to see Hopkins coming to Kansas City instead of Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson is just redundancy for what Juju Smith-Schuster and Mecole Hardman do, and Sky Moore does it, but worse.
Yeah.
And Justin Watson. Those are the guys that they're all the same, in my opinion. Yeah, Deontay Johnson's a little better version of Juju. And Juju was a better version of Deontay when he was younger. But age has not been kind. Age and injuries have not been kind to Juju Smith-Schuster, and he's slowing down a little bit. He was great the first week they had him in that offense until he couldn't stay healthy again. But DeAndre Hopkins, first of all, he's been nursing minor injuries, which I think was his way to say, don't play me because I want out of town. Yeah. This Tennessee offense is awful. I've got the Devontae Adams-itis. I want to be traded, so I'm not going to be 100%. And he'll be fine this week, and he'll quickly develop into a very important receiver for the Chiefs. And here's the reason his upside is limited is because he's not the player he was in 2018-19. He's older. Okay. And the other factor is the Chiefs don't have to score 40 points a game, and they know it. So they don't need to air the ball out 45 to 50 times. They're going to run. They're going to continue to pound the ball until you come up and try to stop it. And then they're going to annoy you with the passes. And if you try to put pressure on Mahomes, you're going to sneak out of the pocket and ramble for a few yards to get that first down. They'll do whatever they have to do to score as many points as they have to score. And right now with their defense, if they get to 20 before the other team, they're winning. They're just winning. It's that simple. That's how good that defense has been. So that limits Hopkins' upside. But do you want to have a guy who's going to catch 5 to 8 passes each and every game on your team
and potentially get a touchdown?
Potentially get a touchdown. If he gets 5 to 8 catches a game like I expect him to, and even if he only averages 10 yards a shot, you're talking a guy that's going to give you 10 to 13 points.
He's going to sit near median.
Yes, he's going to be around median, and then if he scores, he's going to be well above median.
Yes.
That's
so he has a floor ceiling concept on that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he's a 7-8 point floor guy.
Yep.
And his upside, I mean, you
double that easily.
With Mahomes, do you think it's possible that he scores 2 touchdowns in a game or two?
I think he might do that. He's got, 10 games or whatever we got left, 9 games. Yeah, he could do that in 2 games.
So I think there's tremendous upside. I had a lot of teams, Professor, where every week I was considering, is this the week I get rid of Hopkins and pick somebody else up? And I just let him sit at the bench because I was like, no, if he gets traded or if Will Levis all of a sudden learns how to play football, this guy's going to turn into a PPR scoring machine.
Yeah.
He commands targets because he makes those tough catches. Look what happened. I mean, here's another guy that commands targets when he's healthy and when he's got a really good quarterback. George Pickens, look at what he did with the quarterback shift.
Yep.
Because Russell Wilson's going to throw the ball up and say,
and boy, that could be unlocking Pickens.
Yep. So that's what I see with Hopkins, because Hopkins knows how to find that hole in the defense. He knows how to come back to the ball. All the things that Mahomes does well, throw in the ball. Because Mahomes will read what the defense is doing, and he will throw the back shoulder throw.
Yeah.
And now he's got guys that they don't come back.
I think the Kelsey becomes more viable in the red zone, and I think that might even open for. I don't know if Hunt's a good pass catcher, but it wouldn't surprise me that you get a lot more bang for those running backs coming out, because they're going to be on Hopkins, always Kelsey, and that may stretch things. And he'll get them underneath.
Little jet sweep action to Xavier Worthy. I mean, there's so many weapons.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. What about Kupp? Maybe being traded. Are you believing that? I mean, they're even talking Stafford. I didn't know what to think of that. If I have Kupp and I have Stafford, I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on there.
I don't believe the Stafford trade. Okay. I don't think that's happening. I think that the Rams are sticking this out this year with Stafford. And if they make a move, it'll be at the end of the year. But there's so much dead cap sitting there that I don't think they can afford to do it even next year.
Yeah.
Kupp is an intriguing one, though, because Kupp would be more movable in a trade. The thing I hope is that because I do have quite a few shares of Cup in dynasty. I hope he doesn't get traded to a team that ain't going to throw the ball.
I'm
I
hoping
want.
Carr comes back and Cup goes to New Orleans with,
Oh,
and then you got Olave, Kamara's sticking there. Maybe he's happy, and then Cup. Oh my goodness! And Carr can sling it. That's my dream. And Saints have a shot at the play. If something like that were to happen, they'd have a shot at the playoffs. I have a little bit of joy, Dennis, a little joy for a Saints fan.
well, there's a long, long time to go in the regular season for real football. You got 10 more weeks.
Yeah,
You got
but
10
Tampa
more games.
Bay, and I mean, everybody's looking good in that South, except, that. Yeah, anyway, don't get me
But
going here.
but right now, Professor, in real football,
Yeah.
every one of the North teams is in in the playoffs. That everybody, the Bears, the Packers,
Yeah,
the
it's crazy
Vikings.
up there. What a thing.
But as soon as they start beating each other up,
Mm-hmm.
they'll add losses and open up that last
Spot.
spot
Yeah.
in the playoffs to somebody else. And right now, the East is not the one that really is eager to grab it, other than maybe the Eagles. I mean, the Cowboys have been, the Giants are,
Yeah.
the Commanders are the class of that division. So it's wide open right now to grab that last playoff spot. And if your Saints offense
Well, we
gets
got to
hot,
get Carr back. Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. The Rattler experience has been interesting, but he's not ready for prime time.
No, I agree. Okay.
But
What else?
yeah, and it's just, what does Tampa Bay do? I mean, that would
Yeah.
be a logical location for Cup, because the offensive coordinator used to be the wide receivers coach out in LA. So it would make sense. But, sometimes what makes sense doesn't end up happening, and the Rams end up keeping him and having Nakua come back, and all of a sudden they've got a much better team. So there's a lot of craziness that could still happen. It seems like we do get those these crazy trades this year, though. It's been wild.
Yeah. I thought we might want to, because we're trying to, going to record a video after this. Dennis and I are I'm going to have the touch report out, but Dennis and I are going to do a video on that. So this is the Thursday game here, Dennis. I do want to speak. I guess I'll start off with my power rankings, if I can show that. There they are. This is the power. You haven't seen this. This power rankings this week. Atlanta was number one last week. They are number one again. It's just like they have so much potential there, and they didn't do it last week. And then Green Bay, Baltimore, Detroit, Minnesota, Chicago, Cincinnati, Philly, and the Jets are there. Kind of the last. So a lot of those are logical. What I did last week in the betting, I actually just took the money line for the four strongest top ones, and I did a parlay, lost that. But then I looked at everybody and tried to come back, not being stuck on the order of the rankings, just saying these are in the top, pick me the obvious four. And I did hit 3 of 4, and I hit the three, and the last one was Baltimore, and I'd already doubled my money, and I decided that since we're still in the testing, not trying to break the bank, I cashed out and made a profit for the week, Dennis, but I obviously would have made a lot more money proportionally if I'd, if I was full into gambling, I would have done a 4 money line parlay
using these power rankings last week. I did the top four last week parlay. That Atlanta blew me up. I may do it again, so I may take Atlanta. I don't think any of them are playing each other. Green Bay, Baltimore, and Detroit. Maybe even five because I like Minnesota. But anyway, four for $2, and then maybe break out and look beyond that. I'm going to try to avoid in my gambling New Orleans, Tennessee, Carolina, Rams, Cleveland, Indianapolis, Patriots, and the Giants. So I'm going to avoid those. And I do have Washington without Daniels. And they're right there's if I had a lot of Washington wide receivers, I'd be scared. I know Mariota, Marcus looked good. Andy Dalton looked good the first week because nobody's ready for him. Okay. They're ready for Mariota this way. People are just be aware that's the defensive coordinators are not just going to be asleep. Okay, let's pull out our Marcus film, Mariota stuff, and just saying, don't count your chickens too much. I think Scary Terry, that'd be it. Brian Robinson, but I'd be, and maybe Ertz if you got to, but I'd be very scared how deep I'd get on Washington this way. Anyway, that's just my overall betting strategy. Here it is. Y'all can, and I didn't even look at the overall win or losses last week. I do need to chart. I will chart that at the end of the year, folks. But Dennis has, I know, been using this information and strengthening his hand. So anyway, Dennis, that's what it is this week. And what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. Be careful of Washington this week. Playing the Bears. This Bears defense
they
is
ain't fake.
tenacious.
They're not fake. No,
they're the real deal, folks. They put a lot of pressure on the quarterback, and they can double up on McLaurin and just say, beat us with Ertz. And
Eckler is not somebody who will help. Eckler moves the chains and gets you down the field if everything else is working.
Yes.
Eckler's not what's going to break the bank for you.
No. And the Bears have actually been very good covering running backs coming out of the backfield.
We'll look at, maybe we'll look at that game with the Daps, but I haven't checked this week on that.
Yeah, they're just a tough defense. So yeah, I'd be very careful about Washington. If Daniels starts, then it's a whole nother story.
Is there any team down there at the bottom? I know our good friend Greg Kellogg and his group, they like to studs the sleep and the play and all. I'm just curious who, if we had to play in those sad teams, Dennis, is there anybody that sparked your interest down there at the bottom?
Well,
is it Cleveland?
Jonathan Taylor's back for Indianapolis. That's it. Chubb for Cleveland. Does Winston change their fortune this week? That's
What about Drake May?
Drake May is an interesting character. He's been actually pretty good in fantasy. Yeah. Reality, maybe not as much as fantasy football, but Drake May is a guy that, again, depending on the defensive matchups this week, they're going to get against the Jets, and the Jets defense seems to be strong, but they just got annihilated by Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh, who'd barely put up 20 points a game, and they just slammed him with a big number. So maybe the Jets defense isn't as good, and they're missing a couple of pieces. But Winston goes up against the Ravens defense that's been holy. They gave up a lot of points to Tampa at the end of that game. It's this is going to be a very interesting weekend and a very challenging weekend for the power rankings because there's some interesting matchups. And starting right off with this Thursday night game,
Yeah. Shall we
this
go?
game, this could be a trap game for those Vikings because the Rams are at home. Now, I know, they usually don't have much of a home field advantage. But the Rams, if they get some parts and pieces back,
Yeah.
and Minnesota coming off that tough loss and then having to come in on Thursday night and
Yeah.
travel to the West Coast, that's a bad combination
Yeah.
for teams. This game's going to be close.
Well, so we'll go through that. Minnesota 27, Rams 20, -3 spread, 48. So it's a Husky light. So they're predicting a lot of fireworks, and even still with Cup back with the Rams, yeah. But it's Thursday, so I had hope in my voice, and then I realized it's Thursday, so I'm kind of back square one. Minnesota is away. They have an opportunity. We need a certain tight end back. Look at that. Easy dap this week. Dennis, it's just like a plum sitting there. Hawkinson needs to, but I don't want him to get hurt. I got him in so many places. I don't want him to get, use coaches, use the force and keep Hawk healthy now. Come on, that's going to be my sign. Keep Hawk healthy. So, but Dennis, look at the tough. It says Jefferson. They go. I'm thinking people under Jefferson, Addison. I would be worried about.
Yes.
Yeah. Do like the running backs a little bit. They have so Minnesota has an opportunity tight end. So Munt, if Hawkinson doesn't play, Munt may be there's your prop right there. I don't know what a Munt prop is, but if it's a one catch, Dennis, or a big touchdown, any scorer type, if you can get 10-1 or some nice odds, or maybe a parlay with maybe an RB, some, you might, with a Mutt catch, and, you might work a prop or two or parlay in there. The Rams should have opportunities if Cup, look at that, Cup coming back easy, and the tight end, easy. So Parkinson, maybe there's your parlay. If Hawkinson doesn't play, Munt, Parkinson, like catches or some parlay there. I wouldn't play the defenses. The kicker's okay for Minnesota. I like him. I do note Kerwin Williams going to have to earn his biscuits.
Oh, yeah.
So Minnesota's been tough on the running backs, Dennis. Minnesota they like away games. How about that? And in away games, they like to rush a lot more than pass, Dennis. And that's exactly what the Rams are giving them. So Minnesota, the home away efficiency is biased to the away, 19% better in away efficient, and they like to rush. Just be aware, this team, that metric goes in Minnesota's favor. Rams, it doesn't matter home or away, but at home they love to rush a lot more than pass, and the Rams, what they want to do is what Minnesota excels in doing, stopping that run. So I can see where Vegas is taking all these, pieces and put them together and made that line. But there's some options as well. So I think there's some spot plays. If I was gambling some props, I think I'd do parlays. I wouldn't, folks, I wouldn't invest a lot of money, $2 props or something, maybe a couple of parlays this week.
Yeah, this is a game where for me, there's just too much uncertainty right now, and we're less than about 27 hours away from the game time as we record this, and there's still too many unknowns. So this is going to be a game time decision for a lot of players to play or not. And they're important players too, because
Kerwin Williams has been helping me out.
Yeah, and he's been the most inefficient top running back that we've seen in a long time. They are feeding him so much volume. Here's my only concern with that, Professor. Do they take some of that volume away if Cup and Nakua are back and they can actually get back to their normal offense?
A normal routine.
But if that happens, you would think that loosens the box up for Kyren Williams and he can be a little more efficient with his carries. So, yes, Minnesota has been fairly tough. That's what the numbers say when it comes to how they've been defending things. But they've also given up some big plays and they've been scored upon. I mean, last week they gave up 31. They gave up 17 to the Jets. They gave up 29 to the Packers. I mean, they've given up some points this year. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening. That tough rushing defense, for Minnesota, they gave up 144 on the ground last week, including 116 to Gibbs. So, and yes, Gibbs is a fabulous player, probably a little better than Kyren Williams in real football. But Minnesota, I know the depths say tough, but you can get some chunk plays on them. And, we saw Gibbs go for 45 on them last week. So it's going to be interesting. This is going to be a matchup where I think it's going to be a fairly high scoring game. And
48's not too bad, Dennis.
That's a pretty good game. I think they could be in the 50s though.
So you would maybe that's part of your a month over parlay then for $2.
Go over on this one. Yeah. And here's the thing is, like, I don't care that the DAP says tough for Justin Jefferson unless the National Guard comes out to protect the end zone.
Yeah.
I ain't worried about playing.
I'm worried about Addison. I may be moving Addison or all my shares. I may step back on some that, if I've got a better choice.
Yes.
I got to relook at. I mean, right now we're still going into waivers tonight, so I'm still tweaking. So have we? Speaking of that, Tillman, is that who we're going for? Are we going for the Juwan Jennings? Or are we going for McMillan at Tampa Bay? Who's our top pick, and how much money should we throw at them of those three?
I put Tillman ahead
of Juwan Jennings.
Of Jennings, yes.
Oh, okay.
And the reason is because I think he can get.
There's no competition.
There's less competition. You got Jerry Jeudy and Elijah.
Yeah, but he
Moore.
plays a different. Don't those guys?
They play
a little different than Tillman. Tillman's the Cooper.
Tillman is the Amari Cooper now of that offense, and he came through with a lot of targets week one, and now he gets Winston for the whole game. He didn't have Winston.
Winston's going to throw it around, Dennis.
Winston's going to air it out.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be interceptions. So who are they playing? Whoever the defense he's facing you might stream them. I don't know.
Yeah, in the last time we saw Winston, as a full-time starter.
Mm-hmm.
He had 30 touchdowns. He also had 30 interceptions that
That's
year.
what I'm saying.
And they're
So,
playing the Ravens, who are
well,
noted for ball hawking. So
yeah.
yeah,
So there's everybody knows that. Yeah.
he could.
Okay.
Winston could have 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Like
Yeah.
it's gonna be a crapshoot as far as
I guess you
playing
could work
Winston.
that in your props,
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be playing Winston
but you
even
could
in a super flex, but I want his wide
prop an
receiver.
interception.
I want Njoku
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
at
definitely.
tight end. But Tillman is the guy on waivers that I'll pick up. And the reason is nobody's coming back to Cleveland. In San Francisco, Debo is still going to be the man, and Kittle is the other man.
And then Evans down in Tampa Bay.
And when CMC comes back, that's going to take a lot of any touches Jennings would have a shot at away.
So you're saying those are short term, Tillman is long term.
Tillman is a long-term solution all the rest of the season. Now, McMillan down in Tampa, unless they trade, McMillan probably goes into the Godwin role, and we already saw that they like to use him on some of the gimmick plays. So it's Tillman, and then it's McMillan,
and then Juwan Jennings.
Yeah.
What about Cowling?
I like Cowling better than I like Juwan Jennings, and I think Ricky Pearsall could end up being in the mix. So the reason I don't like San Francisco is, first, they don't pass enough to the wide receivers other than Debo. Mm-hmm. Even Ayuk was struggling. So
he was
struggling. He was very spiky, but he was mostly down spiky. He just wasn't getting opportunities. And so none of those guys are better than Ayuk. So I'm not crazy about that. And on the Tillman side, we get a better quarterback than what we've seen over there with the Browns. I mean, Deshaun Watson's was beyond terrible. Gotcha. So Winston's an improvement. So I gotta believe you're gonna get more opportunities. Now, could he be just a 1 week wonder last week and now all of a sudden he falls off? Yes, that's a possibility. I would look also for Rashad Bateman with Baltimore. He has been stepping up to the plate.
There's not a lot of Bateman shares to grab. I think in two of my 41, everybody's already grabbed him.
Oh yeah,
and Jennings. Tillman everywhere. So I may have 41 shots at Tillman.
Yeah, I wouldn't spend a big chunk of money
right now I'm in the 60 out of 1,000. So that may be a little low, but I'm not to where I gotta have. He would be an alternative filler for buys and a flex. That would be the role on my team. I understand with the role on the teams, but on my team, I don't need a two. I've got most teams. I've got a one. Thank God I got a lot of St. Brown and AJ Brown and the Brown. Yeah. Oh yeah, so glad I used our metrics and gobbled those guys up. So I'm finding that I'm basically playing for a flex person in Tillman, Jennings, Cowling, McMillan, Palmer down in Tampa, that kind of thing. Yeah, and Franklin in Denver just as a deep play. And there's a few others that are, way out there. And the guy that you told, who was the guy in Chargers? You said something. It has a weird name.
Simi Fico.
Yeah, I don't even know what is that. Samoan? What is that?
I'm not sure what that is, but he's
so I've got him in my parade of list for $1. He's up there as well. Is probably my fifth. I've shoehorned him right after Palmer in that parade of Tillman, then McMillan, then Cowling, then Palmer, then
then that guy, assuming Jennings is not available and Pearsall's not available.
Yeah, and I grabbed some Tillman in the leagues that already closed waivers. Yeah, I grabbed them for our draft night out team to replace.
Nice. I had some person told me to get Tillman last week, and I hogged him in 3 of my 41. So I didn't have to spend any money on him this week in those 3 leagues. Very glad to have that flex. And thanks, Dennis. That was a great. That's why I'm listening to you about your Chargers guy. Sometimes you're ahead a little bit, and it comes to fruition later, and you got to have patience on some of Dennis's information. He sees it, but it's not quite all gelled there. And no, Tillman, I think, was one that out of the gate last week, and he was on my bench in those 3 leagues, so I didn't play him.
Yeah, and he's not. And here's the thing, Professor, is the reason I'm out ahead on these players is because I'm grabbing these guys first in Dynasty.
Yeah, okay? So you've researched them already.
I see the openings coming. And yeah. I started grabbing some Tillman a few weeks ago when the concept of an Amari Cooper trade was being talked about. And I was like, who's next man up? It's Tillman. Tillman's the guy. And so I started, in deep roster dynasty leagues, you always have positions coming open. Because
I'm giving up Juju in 3 or 4 of those leagues where I had Juju. I'm just concerned getting D-Hop, getting the injury. I just, of course, I didn't get paid. Dennis, I paid $1 for him, so I didn't lose anything.
No,
but I'm shifting out on him in some leagues.
And another guy that I think we can safely shift out on is Whittington. I grabbed him in a lot of leagues as a stopgap measure.
Yeah, I'm starting to move him as well.
So
yes,
so he is officially out for Thursday night already.
Yeah,
and we'll probably miss a few more
weeks. I'm going to go through and make sure that I shift him out then.
Yeah, and that's the way I'm playing. Is I'm saying, okay, Whittington was a good emergency starter at the end of my lineup. If with all the injuries that were going on, now with Kupp and Nakua coming back,
yeah, it's time to go.
He gone, and that's the way you have to play in redraft. Is don't be afraid to turn your roster over. Every once in a while, you drop a player and then he ends up doing something. But usually, you just kind of churn the roster a little bit. Versus Dynasty, where you got to be thinking a little longer term, and you got to have a little more patience. You don't want to make the mistake like I have this year, where you bailed on a guy and then he became something. You'd rather just shuffle in and out of these veteran stopgap 1 week guys and be done with it, or just take the loss that week. Don't give up on young talent. But that's how I catch these guys, is I'm playing for the long term, and I'm like, who is the guy who could surprise people and have a role? And that's kind of how I come up with these picks, and of course try to feed them to you before your waivers close, so you can have a little advantage on the rest of the class. So, but very interesting game on Thursday night. Watch and wait till you see those injuries before you pull the trigger on any bets or any prop bets. So head on over to the scienceoffantasyfootball.com. Check out the professor's data every week, folks. I'm telling you, the efficiency data, the snaps report, the power ratings.
I'm doing touch this week.
Touches, daps, all of the data that Professor posts is all valuable stuff. It's just another piece of the puzzle.
And your 2 datas, your 2 articles are up.
Yeah. So every week from me, you'll see my report on who had the best weeks. I like to track that to see what the trends were. position by position, and it's a quick report for me that I'd be doing for myself anyway. So I'll share that with the public. Also look at who's been best just this year using my best index to get an idea of who's having the best season. And you'll be surprised, folks. There aren't a lot of best seasons happening at some positions. And then my consensus weekly values report, I'm really starting to think that that is a good indicator to watch the plus or minuses to see guys that you might want to pick up as the time goes on and see who's kind of falling up, into the ratings and who's falling back, and play those hot hands. So check all that out and then come back here Saturday for another edition of the Science of Fantasy Football.
Get to work, folks.